Parchment paper is a versatile tool for bakers and cooks with lots of uses that not everyone knows about. But by the same token, it's best to know exactly the right ways to use it, or you might just have a kitchen emergency. Parchment paper can be used for baking cookies to cakes as well as cooking entrees. It is oven safe, but not at all temperatures. This likely doesn't come as too much of a surprise considering parchment paper is, well, paper. According to the label on Reynolds brand parchment paper, it is oven safe to withstand temperatures up to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. The risk of cooking at higher temperatures comes fraught with the likelihood of starting a fire. If you want to avoid potentially playing with fire, keep the creations you make with parchment paper to temperatures under 425 degrees Fahrenheit. If your recipe demands a higher temperature, opt for an alternative liner such as aluminum foil or just cook straight onto the baking sheet or dish. While it isn't quite as easy to clean, nothing will burst into flames and ruin your evening.
Fire! Fire in the kitchen! Everybody out! To the exits! Now! Go! Go!
By cutting your parchment to fit your pan or dish, you can make sure the lining will be even and also help to reduce waste. It also helps make the dishes you cook look neater. For example, if you use a full piece of paper without trimming it down when baking a cake, you may end up with extra paper hanging out of the sides of your pan. This can result in burnt edges on your paper and potentially creases in your cake if the paper fits awkwardly into the bottom of the pan. To achieve a smooth finish on all sides, make sure you cut it down to just fit in the pan. For a round dish, for example, you'd cut out a disc shape that lies flat on the pan's base. This helps to avoid the dreaded, soggy bottom and ensures that your cake won't stick to the pan. Additionally, it helps keep any grease or runoff on the paper versus having it seep into the pan itself, making cleanup more difficult and time-consuming. Certain dishes may do best in a folded parchment paper pouch, where you bundle up the ingredients into the parchment paper and then seal the edges to keep all of the goodness inside. This works especially well for entrees involving meat and vegetables. When you want all of the flavors to integrate and cook together with minimal mess, a parchment paper packet might be just the ticket. Lay the parchment paper flat and place your ingredients and seasonings into the center. Then fold up the edges, create a tent at the top, and fold or crimp the edges all around. Make sure that you fold them a couple of times to avoid any leakage. Finally, top it all off with a fancy announcement that you have prepared your meal en papillote. If you're cooking for a date who doesn't speak French, then in addition to delicious food, you get to serve up a dish of cultural mystery and intrigue. Or if you prefer Italian, you can say it's al cartoccio. Does it really matter which side of your parchment paper you put your food on? Believe it or not, it does. Make sure to keep the shiny side facing upward when you cook with parchment paper. This is the non-stick side, and therefore the side that the food should have contact with. The U.S. Department of Agriculture explains that parchment paper is mostly made of cellulose. It has no smell or taste and is usually made from plant fibers like cotton or wood. Most parchment paper today is made from chemical wood pulp. The slick coating is often made from silicone, although some brands use other ingredients. By keeping the slippery side facing upward, the food should easily come off when it's time to serve up your meal. If you forget and flip the paper the wrong way, remain calm. Your meal will likely still turn out okay, but won't necessarily be as easy to remove. Many people make the mistake of using their parchment paper once and then tossing it. King Arthur Baking Company advises that there's no need to do that though. You can easily and safely use a sheet of parchment paper multiple times. Considering it is often used for low-mess foods, you can simply wipe it off and use it again.
It'll be good.
Smart. Reduce, reuse, recycle.
This tactic works especially well with cookies and similar baked goods. They usually don't leave much of a mess behind after cooking, just a few crumbs. Even if your parchment paper's edges got slightly singed, it should still be safe to reuse. While parchment paper is not outrageously expensive, it is still valuable to reuse when it's appropriate. To know when it's time to finally say farewell to a piece of parchment, King Arthur recommends tossing it when it starts to crack or become brittle. Most people are aware of traditional parchment paper brands, including Reynolds, Glad, and store brands, but there are several other lesser-known brands as well. If You Care is a brand that caters to eco-conscious cooks. It offers parchment paper that's bleach-free, chlorine-free, and does not involve any animal testing. It also places a strong emphasis on maintaining ethical production practices and making sure that manufacturing locations do not contribute to the pollution of lakes, rivers, or streams. Likewise, the brand Kana sells several parchment paper options that you can add to your garden's compost bin once you're done using it. It makes its parchment from 50% recycled materials. In addition to the specifically marketed compostable paper, Help Me Compost explains, along with some useful tips, you can also usually compost parchment paper as long as it is unbleached, unwaxed brown paper and fairly clean. Modern parchment paper is typically coated in a layer of silicone, but don't get it mixed up with silicone sheets, which are made entirely of the nonstick substance. They're reusable, dishwasher safe, and are an alternative to disposable liners like parchment paper, aluminum foil, and wax paper. While parchment paper and silicone sheets may seem to serve the same purpose, there are some key differences. Silicone baking sheets are far more reusable. They can be reused up to 2,000 times, but you can't trim them down like parchment paper. You have to buy them in the right sizes for your pans. Silicone sheets may also be appealing to people who make their own dough and baked goods. Sometimes parchment paper can crumple and wrinkle in this process, whereas a silicone sheet will stay in place better. Parchment paper has been useful for preventing food spoilage for many years, even as far back as 1889, when a local Kansas newspaper gave it a shout-out for its storage benefits. The paper specifically highlighted parchment paper as a great option for packing butter. But to get the most out of this storage method, you must prep your food accordingly. Certain items will store better in different conditions. For example, strawberries hold up the longest when stored in separate layers with a paper towel to absorb excess moisture. Celery stays its crispest when wrapped in aluminum foil and can be rejuvenated by placing its stems in a glass of water. Mushrooms do best when wrapped in parchment paper or a paper bag. There are lots of tips and tricks for food storage online, and many of them remind us that parchment paper can be a real food saver. Some people are truly living the dream and have their very own pizza oven or pizza stone to cook with at home. This gives home pizza chefs a great chance to craft the perfect slice. You might think that since parchment paper is great for baking, it's great for a pizza stone, but that is not the case. Pizza ovens and pizza stones get very hot, so parchment paper can easily burn when used with them. According to NaPizza, a proper pizza oven will reach nearly 800 degrees Fahrenheit and can go even higher for other styles of pizza. Such temperatures are not compatible with our little 425-degree tolerant parchment paper. In a pizza oven or on a pizza stone, parchment paper may also mess up the crust. To get the crunch that pizza chefs crave, the dough needs to make direct contact with the hot surface in the oven. NaPizza notes that parchment paper results in more of a charred leather outcome. Luckily, Pizza Companion reassures home chefs that especially in the case of frozen pizzas or leftover slices, parchment paper is a helpful option. As long as you stay within the temperature limit, parchment paper can still be a friend to pizza.
3 minutes, cheese is starting to thaw.
Frozen pizza, frozen pizza, frozen pizza.
Air fryers are trendy because they're easy to use and often yield better results than a microwave. But they can sometimes be messy, which is where the parchment paper comes in. The author of Air Fry Guide goes through some helpful tips when taking advantage of this parchment paper partnership. For one, you should remain mindful of temperature. Most air fryer recipes keep temperatures under 425 degrees, but it's still helpful to double check before putting in your parchment paper. The last thing you want is an air fryer fire on your hands. You should also avoid using the parchment paper during the preheat phase, because it would not yet be weighed down by the food and could potentially fly around in there and burn on the heating element. If you want to stock up on parchment paper for your air fryer needs, there's a handy product out there that makes it super easy. Pre-cut air fryer parchment squares that are already cut, with various sizes to fit different air fryers. They're relatively cheap and could save some time if you don't feel like dealing with the traditional roll of parchment paper. It sounds cute, but the parchment paper hat is actually a useful method for dishes that tend to burn or for dishes that you want to be crispy on top. Melieur du Chef has a helpful step-by-step of how to make and use a parchment paper lid. Fold the paper to fit the surface of your pan or dish. Once it fits on the surface, open the paper so that it has a hole in the center or a chimney of sorts. This allows steam to escape, while protecting the rest of the surface from burning or becoming soggy. Parchment paper is superior to aluminum foil, wax paper, or the lid of the pan or pot here because it allows the food's moisture to vent steam while still protecting its surface. A related use of parchment paper is the fancy and functional cartouche, which traps the right amount of steam for dishes involving sauces, stews, and braised meats. Bacon lovers, if you have not yet cooked your bacon on parchment paper, you should immediately try it as soon as this video is over.
Ow! That's the Colonel's bacon. You can have bacon when you earn bacon.
Whether you like your bacon chewy, crispy, or somewhere in between, parchment paper can help you achieve the perfect finish without a greasy pan to clean up later. A dedicated bacon fan at the kitchen took time to complete an entire study to compare 8 popular bacon cooking methods. These included sous vide, in the air fryer, microwaving, baking on a rack, with water in a skillet, bare in a non-stick skillet, bare in a cast iron skillet, and in the oven on parchment paper. She tried each way twice with different cuts of bacon, so the methodology was arguably thorough. In the end, she found that parchment paper was the obvious winner, with a score of 10 out of 10 for texture, time, preparation, cleanup, and visual appeal. Once you're ready to clean up, you can simply ball up the paper and toss it in the trash. Please note that this would not be the best time to reuse your parchment paper, and also please make sure you don't pour the grease down the drain. Otherwise, the parchment paper bacon baking is sure to be a success.